Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of the Rewatch podcast presented by the Terrible Video Gamers Club. I'm your host, Tyler Schatz, citizen of Tokyo 3. Joining me for this fine recording session are one Stephen Howard.
Who, like Shinji, is also stranded at a phone booth in the middle of Tokyo, I think 2 at that point, and probably about to be annihilated.
Amanda Howard.
Who, like Shinji, is a little confused and not entirely sure where she woke up this morning.
Everybody's wall is different. One JC.
Like Shinji, unprepared for this. Was not expecting to have to come for the intro.
Oh, that's right. We forgot about that. And last but certainly never least, one Gary Delaney.
I knew I had to have an intro, still didn't prepare it. This whole experience has been a fever dream. Not what I expected, not what I was ready for, and just keep on rolling. That was my theory.
Just nod along.
Yeah.
Like Shinji.
Yeah, I feel like we're the same character right now. Me and him, just not entirely sure what's going on or how we got here.
So we are here to discuss, there is no season, sorry, there's only episodes of Neon Genesis. So we pronounced it last time as Evangelion, but right away in this very first episode, they pronounced the word as Evangelion. I don't know if anyone else ever caught that, but so I'll just be using those words interchangeably. Everybody could keep up or not.
Right.
But here we are to discuss episode 1, Angel Attacks. Shinji Ikari, a 14-year-old boy in the city of Tokyo 3, is delivered to the secret organization NERV, where he is requested by his enigmatic father to save the city from an invading creature called an angel. Hoy, a lot of words there.
Requested being an operative word.
Yeah.
Is there some more history as to what's going on? Because I just kind of jumped into the episode and it's just like, surprise!
Oh, yeah. No,
no,
the episode just starts. That's
Yeah.
one of my favorite things about it. I love it.
It
is the surprise
disaster
motherfucker
declaration,
scene.
and some reason this kid is just fucking hanging out on the streets,
Right?
not without a plan.
Yeah. Eva is definitely a show where you are presented with something and then learn about it. You'll get that quite a bit, and this episode starts off in that way for sure. So
I was going to kind of make a mention, and maybe, Steven, you could back me up on this. I know I just recently rewatched the show, but like Gundam Wing even kind of does that too. It's just like, here you go, here's a world. Now we'll tell you about it as the show progresses.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. Hey, by the way, there's a giant mech blowing up this town. Why are they blowing up this town? You'll find out 4 episodes from now. And that's how it goes.
Gary?
Oh, I was just gonna. Also, the intro was a effing fever dream of like what the f is this? Because there's a song and it's very beautifully sung. And then I get subtitles of what this song is about. And in the and I can't even pay attention to the effing subtitles because there's so much crazy shit going on in the intro. Like there's like flashing words and all sorts of crap going on. Anyway, Steven.
Okay. I actually have that on my notes as anime intro songs are freaking awesome.
yes.
And that is where that you can tell kind of that you've probably never seen too many animes if you're getting all hot and bothered about that anime intro, because that is all anime intros. An awesome pumping song, pictures that mean nothing to you until the end of the entire series, and just randomness. It's or not
What
randomness.
is a
I
spoiler?
should say
That was my other question. Was like, are these spoilers in there?
they're not spoilers more than hints is what to come, and they don't always actually happen. So they might even show events in the intro that you go, oh my gosh, they're going to do that, and they never actually do that. It's just hints as to character, hints as to what people should be feeling. It's trying to give you, the viewer, a a feel for how this show is going to be presented, what to expect, what mind frame maybe to be in. And so when you're talking about kind of the mind fuck, that works for this. It's you're going to have to really kind of open your mind to understand what's happening. But anime intros, theme songs, the best, the absolute best.
I will agree there with the intro song being very good. Like I wrote down the music for the intro and the exit part were very, very good. But then I just had flashbacks in my mind of like when we had those discussions from Game of Thrones for those flashback scenes that we saw. Of like, I bet Gary's just gonna pause this and go scene by scene and analyze this. And I'm highly doubting he.
I'm not. I was just like, fuck this. This is way too much. There's just too much shit going on.
But yeah, it's just like picture. So it just felt like a lot of stuff was just flashed at you right away. So that was interesting to kind of be experienced too. Gary?
It also wasn't like the crazy flashes weren't at the beginning of the song. They were like right as I was starting to read of like, and then it's just like shit going on in the background. And the first, obviously we watched 2 episodes. The first episode, I didn't even pay attention to what I was saying. And I will only give you guys credit for the awesomeness of the song if you can tell me or sing to me the intro in English or Spanish or Japanese or whatever, because it's just la 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 if you don't know what the fuck's going on. Anyway, it's my theory. Amanda?
Can I jump in front of you, Amanda, real quick?
Very well.
All right. Gary, the song is not there to be understood. The song is there to be awesome. Like, that is one of
I'm a boy
who
became
favorite.
a legend who spirits
right, anyways,
in the sky
Gary,
with winged
one
doves
of the most
behind
amazing
me.
things about opening theme songs in animes, especially sung in Japanese, are that you don't get the words of what they're saying. You get the feeling of what is being presented, right? So you're going back to that feeling concept. So you get this feeling of high speed awesomeness, and honestly, I'll be honest. Knowing the words and actually trying to read what the words are instead of just enjoying the music takes away from that experience. Like there are several animes out there I do know some of the words for, and I don't think it always adds to the experience. When you only have this music going and you're able to just kind of be with the music, you're able to kind of, I guess, imprint your own ideas of what this music should be onto the music. And so they're singing this awesome theme song and whatnot, and in your head, because you don't know what they're saying, you're like, all right, so this is what this is supposed to be about. It's some awesome whatever. So I'm going to defend it, Matt. Ren. Amanda?
I will say the theme song was beautiful, honestly. And at first I'm like, okay, this is nice. This is really interesting. But I'm trying to read the words and keep up with what's on the screen. And that ended up being like the rest of the episode for me, where I'm like trying to keep up because it moves so quickly. Like they leave no room for people slow on the uptake. They're like, you got to go, 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 go. And at first I felt like I'm like, you almost need to be like a sugar rush to really pay attention to this thing. I was like, oh my gosh.
Sit here, Miss Speed Reader.
I do read rather well very quickly, but like also sometimes the captions like blended in, because like I think we got to the first couple scenes before I was like, this may have been a mistake, because Steven and I had a very in-depth conversation about whether or not to watch this, the dub version, or watch it in the original Japanese, and we decided Japanese. Like we wanted the full effect of it. But the first couple minutes in, I was like, this may have been a mistake. I'm so focused on reading it, and it's going so fast for me that I felt like I was missing things. But by the end, I felt like I didn't feel like I was better, but I was like, oh no, this is just how the whole show is. Go ahead, Gary. I think you're muted.
You'd have to
Gary,
unmute yourself.
you are on
Gary.
mute.
I muted myself in case the website made noise. Okay. Like an angel with cruel and merciless intent, go forth, young boy. You will become a legend. In time, this blue of the sky will reach you and knock the door of your heart. You look at me.
It's
And
like being read poetry by William Shatner.
Content, you'll merely smile. Once more, the touch you long for, the yearning to find the embrace. You're unaware, though, now, To what fate will sow? Temptation implores you to know.
Yeah, you can stop.
And there's more shit.
Yeah, he is the Bill Shakespeare of our time, Stephen. Remember that.
Gary, you should read out poetry on like an audiobook.
If there's money in it, I'll do it. Fuck yeah. Where do I sign up? Anyway, but as Steven said, not someone who watches anime, not prepared for this, like trying to like take in the story and actually know what the song was, because I thought that was important. Steven's answer was like, the song, what the words are, is not important at all.
Honestly, that's a good observation. If you didn't know how watching anime kind of goes, yeah, you would probably be trying to analyze the F out of those intros. Well, the intros for animes are for vibes and for awesomeness. They're not for massive amounts of understanding.
Also,
That did
not only the
actually-
intro.
Sorry. That did actually save me a little bit because I don't watch anime, but I've heard enough Stevens in the backgrounds and hear like some of his favorite anime, like the opening songs will be on his soundtrack, that I was like, this sounds about normal. So it's just me that's the problem.
It's me.
It's me.
The problem,
I'm
I'm me. Yeah. Also, a different sort of format for, obviously, I'm sure it's an anime thing, is that there's a theme song, there's a preamble to the show, then there's the title card, and then there's the second half of the show. So it's just a weird breakup where the episode is broken up in an interesting way.
Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
fairly normal as well. I mean, I'd say I don't think they actually have that in Dragon Ball Z because I don't think they have like title card placards, but in a lot of animes they do have title card placards. And yeah, Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, I'm slowly going through my Dragon Ball Z collection there, and I think it is introductory part, and then they've eventually come to a little bit of the episode, and then I think a title card shows up of this is the episode name. Watch the episode, and then there's that halfway point, that weird cut commercial thing that's just like Dragon Ball Z, and then it goes back to the episode, and then you get the ending credits too.
Anyway, that was just, the intro was not, I was unprepared.
All right. Yes.
That was just the intro.
Yeah, we've only just gotten through the intro here. So, like it was mentioned here, that this show basically just drops you right into the world of what is going on here, of this kid standing next to a phone booth, this gal driving in some car trying to find this kid. This word gets mentioned, I don't remember if it's in the ending of this episode or the ending of the next episode, where they talk about more fan service is going to be included. And I went, oh, yep, okay, so this is starting to make a little bit more sense here, too, about some of the stuff. So, like, when Shinji holds up the picture of the gal he's waiting for, there's a clean arrow pointed towards her cleavage there. And it's just like, yep, this is going to be that type of a show, too, then, too.
Amanda immediately made comments about that, but that is a very common thing in anime
Yes.
as well, unfortunately or fortunately. However you want to. I think it's unfortunate for a lot of it.
Yeah.
Both of the episodes end with that part that's like more fan service to come.
I have not watched anything. I think this might be the latest show, or the latest show. Well, is it latest or earliest? This is the most recent, I think, anime I've ever watched here. I wonder if it's changed in anything of the newer stuff there. Have they? I mean, I kind of doubt it, but I kind of wonder, have they cleaned up their act just a little? That sounds like a terrible way to phrase that, but like, has it been?
No, you're
changed?
entirely right. It's gotten worse, though. It's gotten far worse. It's still sexualized as it is now, but the unfortunate trend in anime is to make the sexy girl younger and younger, and I say girl because it's girl at this point, younger and younger and younger. So you're getting all this stuff, but you're pointing to the cleavage on a 7-year-old, and it's really freaking weird. It's really, really weird and bad and not great. There's a lot of that. There are some animes that buck that trend, but that is, I would say, I guess I'm not sure if that is. I would say that's abnormal at this point. So honestly, for me, having watched these other animes and seeing this here. I'm watching these sexualized references happening, and I'm watching Misato. Basically, they're pointing at her boobs. They're showing at one point her underwear and stuff like that. And I'm like, you know what? At least she's probably in her upper 20s. So at least that's got happening here. I'm not even fazed by the sexuality. But
that was another bonus question, like not this episode, but it's just a generality of the age of Misati. You think she's in her 20s?
I've got to say she's probably, I think it says at some point how old she is, but I think she's like 28 or maybe like 28, 27, 29, something like that.
I thought they said 30s.
That could be easily right.
That does not seem like the way the character is shown, but whatever. I may be misunderstood.
Well, I will say before we move past this, because we're getting kind of close to Shinji, the first scenes that it starts showing are some iconic anime scenes, and the one I'm specifically thinking of are all the UN tanks pointing their guns out over the sea in that one giant line. That is a iconic anime image, and kind of up there with Ghost in the Shell when there's a plane that flies over. And so I think there's a lot of shows nowadays, whether it be anime, whether it be regular cartoons, whether it be anything else, that don't really match the gravitas that you get in some of these scenes with, like I pointed out in my things, the guns pointing over the sea, and when the N2 landmine explodes later on in the episode, it just goes, or when the angel punches the missile that coming at it, Amanda audibly, as that happened, goes, "Whoa!" Like, yeah, it's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, it's definitely too kind of even showing that like that trope there of like, oh, the government's just gonna throw every big weapon they have at this thing and like brute force try to kill it, and it's like, that's not gonna work here. Come on, guys.
Yeah, I couldn't help myself. I think after like the second one, and I was like, oh no, let's throw another bomb at it.
Yeah, Amanda's sitting there making fun of the military guys, telling them smoking's bad.
Yeah, they had this. It showed this huge, like, I don't remember when did the show originally come out, but it like zoomed in on this cigarette holder, like of all these used cigarettes, and I was like, that's a lot. There's like 3 guys sitting there. If they've been chain smoking this whole time, no wonder they're making terrible decisions.
According to IMDb, it was 1995. I should preface that too. 1995 when this was out. And also too, speaking of like anime tropes there, Steven, like you were mentioning there, the whole pushing the glasses up from your face there to kind of signify your, what is it? Is it either like smart or there's a slight like evilness to you or something like that too?
No, it's smart, it's clever, and it means you have an idea or you're one up on your opponent. It just, and no one can see us because we're not doing the video, but I'm sitting here, you put your fingers on the bottom or the tip of your nose and just push up your glasses, and the glasses shine as they do it, and that's what you're entirely right.
So, as before in the past, we've kind of wrote down questions to kind of ask the larger group there about the show of the episodes that we watched. I did not really write down any questions for this other than just writing down a lot of random points as I was watching the episode. So I'm going to throw it over to Steven here. I've kind of thrown out a couple of different points right away. So I'm going to throw it over to Steven here. Do you have a kind of question to maybe start us off with?
I took so many notes.
Gary's already ready to, like, Gary, do you have a point, or were you just ready to fight Steven?
I just have a question, and maybe we kind of sort of glossed over it, but how is everyone watching it language-wise? Captions, no captions, English, Japanese. How is everyone watching the show?
So Amanda and I are watching it via Netflix, and we are watching it in Japanese with subtitles.
And I am watching it a DVD copy. No, sorry, it's a Blu-ray copy, and I am watching it in the English language there. I should also mention here too. Sorry, I should also mention I'm watching it twice. Once to just fully absorb the episode as a casual viewer for the first time, The second time, I'm actually taking notes.
I'm doing the same.
I'm only watching this once because I got shit to do. But I'm watching it on Netflix with English spoken and English subtitles. And I was curious if anyone else had listened in English with English subtitles because it is two different translations, two very, very different translations.
Oh.
I would say that the spoken word is Americanized English, and the written word is slightly different, but it might be a direct word for word translation.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Like
It's more
because
yeah.
the,
Sorry.
the spoken kind of gets the tone of the conversation of like, oh my gosh, my apartment's a mess. I'm jumping ahead. Or of like, my apartment is in disarray. And it's just like, or it's just a different, and honestly, it's actually, I think, more difficult to watch with subtitles because there's a language, like there's just, they literally, it's not even like they change a word here or there. Like that sometimes happens with closed captioning in general. But like, they'll completely rewrite a sentence to kind of make it sound more American English. So, Steven?
No, you are right about that, and I think that I would say probably the Japanese translation is and captions for the Japanese translation are more direct, accurate in what did you say? Word for word translation.
Direct word for
Thank
word
you.
translations.
Direct translations. For me, I feel like you get a little bit more of the. For me, I feel like you get a little bit more of the feel of what they're trying to say, and sometimes there's some nuance that might be lost when they try to change it to an American audience.
I can honestly, I don't like agreeing with Steven. Let this be known. I don't like agreeing with Steven, but I do feel like there is some nuance that is lost because the general tone of the character in some of the translations is a little different. I was thinking of this, it's more in the next episode, but just the interactions in the apartment when we get to that point of like how the two characters interact. The language being used is slightly different and sort of gives a different tone for how that conversation is being had.
Yeah,
That's all.
I agree.
That was my question. That's my only question for this episode, I think. Over to you, Steven.
Well, I guess so. I don't know. There's some general anime questions and some more specific questions. One of the questions that immediately came up for me is, why is the UN defending Japan? And I mean, they make reference, I believe it is in the second episode, that there are some countries left, but this is to defend all of humanity. So it makes it seem as if maybe this might be the last bastion of humanity on Earth. They don't directly say that, I don't believe. Maybe I missed that. But if it is Japan being defended here and all that sort of stuff, why is it the United Nations on absolutely everything? So
I also noticed that, Stephen, the UN is on the tanks, it's on the helicopters, like, and I was just like, isn't there, I don't know if there's a better abbreviation for like Japanese military, like the JM. But it is very noticeable that everything is marked UN. Like, and maybe that's just for simplistic artistry of like, how do you very simply explain that these are not tanks of aggression, that they're tanks of neutrality? It's a force of neutrality, like United Nations, versus like German tanks, American tanks, like in World War II. Like, which ones are the good tanks? Which ones are the bad tanks? They're just tanks. They're meant to murder people. So, I don't know.
Gary mentioning what all of us thought in middle school when you're learning about it. Which of these are these good tanks? Should I be cheering this?
Yeah, this are the good tanks. I don't know which. I don't know who to cheer for in this. I just want to own a tank.
Gary's lost his hero of the revolution, and he's still searching for one.
I wonder if we'll have a new hero of the revolution in this show.
Yeah, maybe.
He cannot be replaced.
So I
Ramsey was
guess
a lot to
Oh no.
Ramsey was
I
a
guess-
lot to follow up with. So
Well, I guess my second question is, one of the key parts of this episode is Shinji's interaction when he gets finally into Tokyo 3 and gets down to the Evangelion and is there with the scientists who I can't remember her name off the top of my head and I didn't write it down. Sorry, I just remember her as scientist all the time. Misato and Shinji's dad. And that is a pretty intense scene where the first time I watched this, I'll be very honest, I was sitting there going, Shinji, you got to buck up. You got to be the hero. Everything's counting on you. Come on, man. You got to do it. You got to do it. And on this rewatch, I was almost, wow, this seems like emotional abuse. Like they are abusing the crap out of this 14-year-old right now. And it seemed a lot less pushing for heroicism and a lot more abuse the child sort of thing until the child does what you want. And I was wondering what your guys' thoughts on that were.
Yeah, I was going to say it definitely seemed like there's a history that maybe will be explored throughout the show between Shinji and his dad there. His dad is very forceful of, no, you must do this. This is why I called you and everything like that. And then it feels like, too, they bring that other pilot out there and kind of, like, it's almost a, fine, if you're not going to do it, we'll bring this broken down pilot out there to kind of do it and make you feel bad about not doing it or participating. So there definitely seems to be some history there for sure. Back to you, Stephen.
Well, real quick, I was going to say, I'm pretty sure I wrote down this somewhere. Where the F is it? Oh yeah, it's the exchange. Is she still viable? She's not dead. And that's how they treated the other pilot who,
yeah,
do they actually say her name in the first episode?
they called her
Yes,
Wasn't
I
Ray?
believe
Ray?
he is named in the first
Ray.
Yeah,
episode.
Ray. But did they say like her last name? Do you guys remember at all?
I think
Dude,
I just
who
Ray.
knows?
Okay, just Ray. All right.
They may have,
So
but
I have a
wasn't
question about
focused
that in
on
the
that.
next episode. So, but yeah, that was pretty intense. I guess my next question. Oh, Tyler, sorry, did you have something?
No, I was just going to kind of, it's not really a question here, but just more of another factor that I wrote down. So I was sensing strong Pacific Rim vibes or an influence from that Pacific Rim took from this movie when they talked about the neural uplink and everything like that. I was like, oh, yeah, Pacific Rim got that in their movie, probably from this or from anime in general there, of the pilot and the mech becoming one, essentially. Gary?
No one can hear me, but I'm agreeing with Tyler. Like, I also, anime idiot, was that I very much got Pacific Rim vibes.
Do I need to be keeping a board here? Times Gary agreed with Tyler and Steven.
Oh, I like it. Yes, you do.
Like both of you in the first in these first episodes already. Pretty impressive.
I like Pacific Rim. Tyler likes Pacific Rim. Steven knows a bunch of crap about military blah blah, and I agreed with his general sentiment. I don't remember what I agree with Steven about. It's like I blacked it out already.
That's fair.
That's fine.
So-
Then there's no proof.
My last comment on this or my last question on this, I have a lot of comments, but my last question on this is the nature of the angel as it comes down. Like, I thought it looks monstrous, and it looks like a monstrosity, I would say. And one of the things that you immediately note is when it fires its giant laser weapon, the laser always comes out in a cross. This is an angel that fires a cross. There's some pretty heavy symbolism being just fucking bammed on your head here. Now, I didn't know if you guys had any sort of thoughts about this, but I thought it was interesting that they named these monsters angels, and that these angels do have some qualities that harken back to, I would say, probably Christian religion. That's what they're kind of going for here. Gary.
I don't know anything about this show. So conspiracy theory number 1.
Yes.
The Angels are actually another country or another organization trying to attack Japan. So there's another evil organization or government that's controlling these and is trying to, start a world war. I know nothing. So if I'm right, I'm not spoiling shit because I don't know shit. So Tyler.
Yeah, I definitely picked up on the cross motif that was showing up. I think after like the second one, I was like, wow, that's constantly a cross that's being blasted there at them too. And then also too, I picked up on this part from the beginning part of the episode where they say it's like it's been 15 years or something like that. There's a time that now they see another angel here. So how did they defeat the angels the first time? It definitely wasn't superior firepower from the UN. Amanda.
I did not actually pick up on the cross thing, Steven, so very, very good catch. But I do have to throw a little thing about there of, obviously you guys know more than me, and so this is me not knowing anything. Maybe they noticed that these guys always throw their firepower down on a cross and therefore named them angels because of that. But
I did not notice the cross, but also I didn't care. I was focused on the giant fucking monsters. And the fact that their government was willing to sacrifice a 14-year-old kid to achieve victory. So, the government and a father was willing to sacrifice their son. Which also might be a Christian motif. The father sacrificing the son, blah, blah, blah. Anyway. Conspiracy number 2. Father-son crucifixion. Steven, you're up.
So because you guys brought it up, I'm also going to note some interesting things in here as well. That, first of all, why the F is Rey so badly beating the crap out of? It makes it almost seem like she's been fighting these angels the entire time. The angels haven't shown up for 15 years. So what has she been doing? Like, why does she have the crap kicked out of her at this point? It's my first thing. My second thing also is it's interesting. Shinji's 14. The last attack was 15 years ago. Maybe there's just some connection there.
Similar to
those
theory,
are things that you guys brought up. Sorry,
Steven. It's similar to the theory of that every year, whatever team wins the Super Bowl, there's a baby boom.
Shinji's a Super Bowl baby.
Next year. Yes.
Yeah. I guess I might have some other points, but I will railroad everything if we keep going on me. So let's move on to someone else.
I did want to call out a line from the dad there that I thought was just completely random. I need a rose, so I sent for you, when he's talking about Shinji piloting the mech there. So I was like, okay. I'm not quite for sure how that relates, but sure. But anyways, maybe I'll use that line as a pickup line one of these days.
I expect that to hear, next time we go down to the bars, I expect you to hear that line being dropped just constantly.
Okay, I'll work that into my terrible game. Amanda, did you want to go next?
Sure. I did not write down questions or observations or anything. I was just trying to take the whole thing in as a whole. I did make comments while we were watching it and ask questions, and it wasn't until near the end that I noticed Steven visibly choosing not to say anything when I asked these questions, because I would get my answers if I just, waited and watched the show. I'm guessing from what you guys are saying, this is going to be kind of the norm where something happens and then I'm like, what happened? Like, he showed up in bed and I was like, well, they're not even going to tell us what happened. Sure enough, yeah, you have to be patient, and they do a lot of flashbacks. They move very quickly. My other question, which this is more of a childish question, doesn't really matter, was I was like, who made the choice to paint this presumably super expensive thing purple and green? Like, is there a choice for this? Is it just to make it visible in the sky? I want to know. I must know these answers.
I'm wondering if it's a contradictory visual style, because the angels are very gray, brown. I'm colorblind as fuck, so they could be like a completely different color. But anyway, and the city is kind of monotone, but then the the good guys come in a very vibrant colored super suit. So I'm sure it's just a visual choice to allow some contrast between good, evil, and the city that didn't stand a chance.
See, I just want to know, like, the colors threw me off enough at first that I was like, just from a realistic point of view, who chose these colors? But also for the viewer, I was like, I don't know if this is just bright colors are a little more popular in anime, but I was like, those, to me, it almost looked evil. So I was like, is this bad? Is it going to take over? What's going on? So that's interesting. Steven, I can see you holding your thoughts back.
No,
There's nothing going on in his head. Don't worry.
I'm listening. No, I am I'm officially brain dead, so we're fine with that.
Go ahead, Tyler.
Oh, I had a point that was going to branch off from one of your things, Amanda, of like something. If you just wait a little bit, it's definitely going to show you. But there's also, yeah, that's what it was. Like you had mentioned, like if you just wait a little bit, you're going to find out the answer to some of your questions. But I also feel, and this is like on something that came up in my recent rewatch of Gundam Wing, and I think a couple other anime shows that I've seen. Is just like there's always sometimes a feeling of like something happened between scenes, but they just move you forward anyways and expect you to kind of just read between the lines. I don't know if that's maybe a vibe anyone else got, or maybe it's something that gets addressed later on too. But sometimes it just feels like there's a scene missing, so we just like it just jumps us to this scene down the line.
Mise-en-scene? I think that's a filming term. I forget what it's too, but I remember there's a term called mise-en-scene.
Yeah,
Steven.
but yeah, sorry. It's just sometimes there just feels like there's just something missing, but like it doesn't like necessarily detract too much really from the story. It's always just something that I've kind of picked up of like, okay, now we're here. Okay, yep, focusing. Now we're here. Steven.
No, I definitely have seen that too. In episode 2, they actually have the scene where when Shinji's getting out of the hospital, and we'll get to episode 2 in a second, but Misato comes over and basically invites him to stay at her place, and then there's probably discussions with the top brass, she says, but it doesn't cut to that. All it shows is her walking up in a silent frame from far away to Shinji and just standing there. Next thing you cut to is, hey, we got everything sorted out. We're going to be best buddies and friends and all that. So I do think it's a stylistic choice.
I had a random stylistic question, and that is the elevator. Did anyone else feel that the elevator wasn't moving? Like, I think there was like lights moving or a line moving, but when I looked at this scene, I was like, it just looks like the lines are moving, but not the elevator.
I think that's like an anime trick there, where you've got a still drawing of like the vehicle and stuff like that, and then you're just doing effects on the side of it to make it seem like it's moving. So you're not constantly drawing new frames of animation for every little bit of the elevator moving.
And something also to point out on that, and this was also in the second episode, but at one point Misato is standing next to a giant truck, and she's standing just talking, just still, but you can actually see the different frames because this was done in 95. She looks like she's slightly vibrating, and those are the different frames just cutting in, and that just, it's kind of the style.
I did think as I realized that they were actually going to mostly fill me in, part of me was like, gosh, what if like I don't know what's going on? The other part of me kind of wonders, like I usually do in other shows, it does annoy me sometimes when they like feel the need to ridiculously spell things out for the viewers. So I will be interested to see how I feel about that by the end of this show, because I'm guessing it's going to keep doing this. So maybe I'll like this.
You will be wishing.
Anime doesn't wait for you to sit there and be spelled things out too. They want you to keep up. Let's go.
Some anime doesn't wait for you to spell things out. This is one of those that does not spell anything for you.
Did you have anything else you wanted to touch on, Amanda?
No, I'll have random thoughts as you guys say things probably.
All right, Gary.
I've nothing else on episode 1. I can go to episode 2.
Okay. I wanted to call out here. There was the scene where all of a sudden somebody got on a floor elevator, like in the middle of this office thing, in this little tiny square elevator. He's just like, "Peace out." Just shrinks down like, "Oh, floor elevator for the win there."
Damn straight.
And then
Are you really a super scientist if you don't have a floor elevator to just you're out of there?
if you
He
don't
even
have-
just says, "Take care of it."
Yep,
Bye.
he does.
Like,
And then I wanted to ask, they mentioned something, a geofront. Is that something that gets explained? Like then they're talking about Tokyo 3 there. They're descending down into the city. He looks down and is like, a geofront. And I'm like, okay, what? So I don't know, is that just something that gets explained, or maybe it's just some thing I should just spend time looking up and go, okay, what the hell are they talking about?
I don't remember it off the top of my head if they do, so
Okay.
I can't answer that for you.
All right. Other than that, that's about everything that I have. Other than, I guess we missed the one part there where the angel's attacking the area. It's getting closer and closer to the base, and it attacks just enough so stuff starts falling down in the base. And then all of a sudden, the angel reacts to protect Shinji there from falling debris. I think I just took this one point Steven wanted to mention.
Oh, no. I have
Oh.
one more point after that as
Okay.
well, but that was one of the points I wanted to mention. And on this watch, I don't know if it seemed like it to you. It looked to me like Ikari controls the Evangelion because he puts his hand over his head. And if you look at him and the Evangelion is copying what he's doing with his hand. It could be the Evangelion protecting him, but given how fast he syncs with this thing, it could also be something such as maybe he had a innate connection with this. Obviously, Ikari's dad believes he is the only one that can pilot this. Maybe that innate connection doesn't even have to be controlled via these cerebral implants, basically, that you put into the machines.
I actually thought that's what happened at first because I was like, oh, he controlled it with his mind. And then they were like, oh, it reacted to protect him. And I was like, oh, I was wrong, I guess. Sorry, my bad. So that's interesting that you say that. I don't know if I want you guys to answer this. Is it going to explain who gets to be pilots of these things? Don't answer that. I'm just curious.
Who's the chosen one?
How was the chosen one decided? How does he know that he can summon his son, who I did not realize is 14 years old?
You see, when
but has
every
been
Ikari is born, the gods flip a coin.
Oh, God.
Also, I think I mentioned, I couldn't remember it at the time, of like the difference in the spoken word versus the translation, that that scene where like the thing covers like those words, and that scene played out a little differently in the written language versus in the spoken language. Like how sad he was about the girl on the stretcher. Like, it was a very, very different feel. So
Yes, I was just listening to the audio. How what were the two kind of different tones that were opposing each other?
I was just saying that like the written, like the subtitles, is very much a 1-for-1 language transition of the words to words. The spoken English is very much an American English-ized translation of like a little more, not slang, but just a little more the feel of how someone would speak naturally in English. And just it was like different word choices, and also just a different way you'd get to the same point. But like I think Steven was saying, like depending, the word choice makes a difference of like kind of conveying a little bit different feeling about like this whole robot human chosen one thing, like, is probably very, very important to the story and trying to get you hooked in, and it's explained just slightly differently, and the kid reacts kind of, just the word choice and how that scene plays is just it's a little different. So
I don't know if you heard any of our discussion points there, JC, by chance, or
Fortunately not. Yeah.
Okay. I guess we kind of covered it. Felt like a lot of the episode there. I don't know if you had maybe wanted to throw.
I can just do a quick rundown of my notes if that works.
Sure, go for it.
To compare through. Opening song rips, lots of cool imagery. I enjoyed the far off future of the year 2015. Masato's letter to Shinji, the Netflix, if you have the subtitles off for the audio, gives you the full rundown of everything that Masato wrote on her letter to Shinji, saying that she's coming to pick him up. I don't know if anybody else saw that. I wrote the full text. Dear Shinji, I'm coming to get you, so just wait for me. Get a load of these, and there's an arrow pointing to her boobs, which I thought was, what the fuck, Masato was my next note there.
Oh, so
There's
she's
just-
the one who wrote the stuff on there. I thought it was just like
I think so.
I might have to
Oh
like
yeah,
after
definitely
this
her.
thing.
It was definitely her.
Well, I
After
did
this-
not catch
yeah,
that. Yeah.
After this
Yeah,
recording,
so-
I might have to kind of show you guys like the stuff that I'm looking at just to see, because maybe something isn't translating over right like it kind of should. But
And it could be something like maybe if you're more used to reading Japanese, like maybe you can tell that there's different handwriting between the two. Like she wrote, "Dear Shinji, I'm coming to get you," and then someone else wrote, "Get a load of these." I don't know. It reads on the subtitles at least like that was all Masato, so it was weird.
Oh, I think it's definitely Masato, and that vibes with her character.
Yeah, I'd agree. She's weird like that. We'll get into.
About age, and you guys are saying that she's 30. I was expecting like 22, 23,
Yeah.
24, 25-ish.
No.
She's old. Like
Old.
I didn't get that.
Wow. Every
I'm
single
old.
person
I'm
on this
old.
podcast
Like-
just got gray hair as you were
Yeah.
saying that.
I got
Maybe
very
that-
much like an immature yeah girl 21-year-old who's at the bar taking shots.
I'd say 25 max is what I thought, but yeah. I'm
I'll
with
actually
Gary.
address that a bit in the second episode when we get to that.
Just had the note. After 15 years, yes, there's no doubt it's an angel. Very cool introduction to the fact that the monsters are angels. Loved that. The into mind being used is rad. We learn more about that later in the series, but just seeing the first use is great. That there's an into mind. Basically, I don't know if it's small world building, but it's basically like non-nuclear mine. So it's supposed to be a nuclear-sized blast without actually nuclearly destroying things. I'm sure Steven is recoiling it nuclearly. I love that Masato has like a little jazz interlude when driving Shinji back after the mine explosion, where it's just like jazz kicks on and she's worried about her finances and her outfit and stuff. Weird. The special agency NERV, if we're going to be weird about pronunciation of Evangelion, NERV is apparently the German pronunciation of the word, and so especially in Netflix, sometimes they're going to be saying nerve, sometimes they're going to be saying nerf. Who knows what's right? When you first see it, you can read the tagline, God's in his heaven, all's right with the world. Very fun tagline. I did look into that more. I don't know if y'all discussed that much to begin with.
Nope.
All right, yeah, it's basically from an old poem. I'd have to look up the title again, but the poem is essentially all about this girl going through the world, and like everything is just terribly dark and depressing in the world. And then in the middle of the second verse or something like that, she basically sings this fun little song that's just light and airy and fun, and it ends with the line, God's in his heaven, all's right with the world. So in the middle of all this darkness, here's just this one cheery line, and they chose that little line to put as the special super secret agency's little tagline. So yeah, fun stuff. Gendo announcing Shinji's arrival with another spare will arrive shortly, rather than like, hey, my kid's coming, you know. Masato asks Shinji for his ID forms, and you can see they're all like torn up and retaped together and just completely all redacted. Did some looking up at that, and the only thing that was really written on there is apparently the phrase from Gendo, come here. So that's all he actually told Shinji to do. And Red Pin scribbled it out, so Shinji clearly had a rough time with that. He's the third children, as reported by the Marduk Institute. That's a fun phrase. I'm sure that was probably part of the whole translation thing, being third children. But apparently that was something that, I don't know if it was discussed, where it was originally translated in English as the third child in the earlier, like probably the DVDs or Blu-rays, if you're listening to the subs or the dubs there. But then Netflix put it back to being third children. So just a weird thing.
Is that a China thing where like China had a one-child rule? I didn't know if that like inside third child, if that's like a reference to.
We don't understand
Japan.
what they're referencing yet. They just you hear it for the first time here in episode 1 where
Am
he
I
goes,
making
he's the
stuff
third
up in
children.
history, Steven? Am I making stuff up?
The one-child policy was happening in '95. That was in China, though. They're in Japan.
I
So
don't do good at geography. I
That's
regret
fair.
nothing. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
that they call the Evangelion the artificial human was a specific phrasing that I really took pain to note this time. That it took Rei 7 months to seek with the Eva. Shinji's quote to his dad after first saying him, "You left me because I was no use to you, right?" And then Gendo just coldly replying, "Anita Rose, so I sent for you." Just love their dynamic. So very cool. Shinji first.
Hold on. Let's
Go ahead.
pause there. And
Yeah.
when you say you love their dynamic, so one of my comments was, with the first time I watched this, and they're having that conversation between them, trying to convince Shinji to get in the Evangelion. And my first time I watching this was, oh, he's got to be the hero. He's got to do this. He's got to get in there. And my second watch through was, he is being emotionally abused this entire time. So when you say, it's a neat relationship they have there.
Yeah. So it is. I think to expand on it more properly, yeah, their dynamic is harsh in a. It's
Oh, yeah.
over the top, but like there's definitely threads there that you can tell that came from something real in the creator's life. The people who wrote those words, they've felt those sorts of things with a parental figure in their life at some point. So I appreciate the depth and the gravitas that those lines and those interactions have to them. Yeah. Then bleeds from there into Misato being the one to kind of coerce Shinji. Shinji, tell me, why'd you come all the way here? Don't run away now. And that's kind of the start of what becomes a running motif for Shinji of don't run away. Don't run away. Yeah. The Eva moved. I did get back to hear y'all talking about the Eva moving. Some choice lines from the background there that I really enjoyed. Its right arm broke the restraints. The fact that these artificial humans they're not sitting there in brackets or braces, they're in restraints. It's a fun concept.
Well, that's real quick on that note as well. They also, when they're starting the Evangelions booting, it says no signs of a runaway. Why would there be signs of a runaway?
Right.
Well,
So many good little world building things there. Yeah. And then last thing, pointing out the LCL as it comes in and fills up the tube, having it liquid completely fill your lungs. Shinji saying, "This is gross." And then this is one of the ones I alluded to in episode 0 where Sato replies to him, "Just deal with it. Come on, be a big boy." Depending on how what different translation you're looking at, sometimes that's be a man. So.
Yep.
And then, yeah, very cool final episode line going into episode 2.
Please don't die.
Yep, Shinji, please don't die. Good little tag to, good cliffhanger to put your 14-year-old protagonist in going into your second episode of the whole show.
So I will add 2 more notes onto that. One is when they're going down in the elevator to the Evangelion. One of the things you see in the background, if you're actually looking at the background of the elevator, is a giant freaking hand sticking out of the muck mire. And it doesn't introduce you to the fact of what they're going to see first. So that's just kind of a nice little drop that's happening.
Yeah, and it ends up like framing Shinji as well, so that at some point like the hand is just kind of covering Shinji as he's going across. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so it's like the hand of the mech, or what kind of hand is it?
I don't think we've seen the source of it yet. Yeah, there's just this.
It doesn't actually explain.
There's just a scene where it's the silhouettes of Risako, Misato, and Shinji all going up the elevator, and it's basically mostly purple, and then it just becomes you see this large hand sitting in the background as they go past. We will see more of that in the next episode. Also, they've referenced the Geofront thing, which I don't think they really get much into it specifically, but it's a cool concept that they keep coming back to in the show, where basically it's this inner core of the earth that's all hollowed out, and you first see it as they're going down in the car elevator, and there's basically a hanging city, and then they look down and they're able to see a lake and the secret NERV headquarters base sitting down there in the form of a pyramid. So yeah, it's a cool concept to have just like see this giant, huge opening in the interior of the earth that you can just build an entire secret base with. So yeah, and that's basically how Tokyo 3 runs, as we'll later find out.
One more thing that I noted here before we move on is when they do empty out the water that the actual Evangelion is, it looks like blood. It looks like it's just bathed in blood. And when they are evacuating that fluid out of the chamber that the Evangelion is stored in, I would say it's almost like kind of like a birth or something like that, and you're getting rid of all these fluids, and either that or it's being born in blood, whichever one you want to see there. One way or another, it's a striking visual.
Yeah, you get a lot of those sorts of visuals here for sure, and even going into that the LCL fluid as it fills up. I mean, that's having recently had kids as well, like that's what the amniotic fluid is doing inside for kids as well. Like it's a fluid that they're entirely sitting in, and they are breathing that at all times. That's how they're, breathing, for lack of a better word, it's actually a liquid that has filled their lungs. And so here we are readdressing it inside of this robot here. Sorry, artificial human, however you want to put it.
Overshare.
That's just biology, man.
This is the natural order.
I got bad news about where some of this stuff and some of the gore in this series is going to go, if that's bugging you out.
I'm going to hold strong that that's still gross. Anyway, continue.
Are we good to move on to episode 2 then?
Yeah. Yep. I'm not sure if anybody else watched the preview. Sorry, I corrected there, but
I did.
Yeah. Yeah, the Eva defeats the angel, but that was just the beginning. Shinji runs away. Masato tries to save Shinji. And then Masato has this kind of recurring line. Tune in next time for lots more fan service.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. Thanks, Masato.
That's something we touched on here earlier, too. It's just like, when I heard that, and then like I've seen a couple of scenes specifically in the second episode for sure that we'll talk about, I was just like, oh, okay, so this is going to be that kind of a show here, too. Or this stuff's going to be in there.
Yeah, but it's interesting that it does like kind of call it out to then, like, is it calling it out just because it knows its audience and it knows that's what it's looking for, or is it kind of trying to be subversive in some sense? So, especially as we kind of go on and the series becomes not necessarily a super fun time, gets more into the depression era that Steven has discussed. It's weird that then like you think back to like, oh yeah, remember they were just lightheartedly talking about fan service, and now we're just like existential dread is the topic of the day. But something to keep in mind. Now I'm done.
All right. Moving on to episode 2, The Beast, or whatever it might be titled on Netflix. In the wake of the previous battle, Masato hastily decides to let Shinji have a room in her apartment, where he discovers just what an irresponsible person his new guardian is. Shinji is also haunted by memories of his fight with the angel. The very first thing I have written down on my page is, why is there a cord attached to the mech? Now I wonder
that you guys... explain that.
Okay, so we'll explain that, because I was like, okay, well, you guys mentioned that there's restraints. They call it restraints holding it. So now I'm like, okay, do they just have another essential restraint on it to prevent it from going too far away from the base or something? But I will patiently wait for more explanation to come here in future episodes. Also, too, there's a secret council that's meeting there. It kind of felt a little bit like the Avengers movie, where they've all gathered around in holograms, talk to each other about everything, and get updates and all of that. And then I had a question here about, they mentioned a project. I did not catch it when I was writing my notes down. They mentioned blank project. What is the project name?
Human Instrumentality Project.
Okay. I can only imagine what that is.
It is a glimmer of light. It is humanity's only hope. And they cannot push back the timeline on it because there's no turning back.
Okay. And final call out is the Mitsubishi logo on the truck as it's driving towards the camera.
I missed that.
Damn right.
I was like, okay, well, that's just weird because usually they don't do a lot of stuff like that. Turn it back over to you then, Stephen. What do you want to pick up on?
Well, I'll first say that I have a name for the council that you have called it, and I call it the Council of Color, because each one has their own different little color. And I think that the animations of those characters are each over the top in the best tradition of anime. Like, you see each of them and they immediately stick in your head. You're like, you show me that guy again and I will immediately recognize him because that guy is distinct. And so I thought I enjoy the Council of Color. So we'll hear more about them later. So I guess for my questions, one of the main things about this scene, and unfortunately my wife is putting to bed my child right now, so she's not going to be here for this, so I will reference her a little bit, but is the cutaway from the battle to Shinji in the hospital. And it is absolutely incredibly quick. There is no waiting. We'll talk about the battle. I'm assuming someone is going to want to talk about the battle a little bit more. But I think just how fast it cuts away. Amanda was sitting on the couch and she turns to me and goes, "What just happened? Did I miss something?" And I didn't say a word. You didn't say a word. And I think that is one of the key fun things about this show is how it does expect the audience to kind of pick up where it is leading off from. It's not going to hand feed you. And it also is just a very cool, I guess, director thing. I don't know, showmanship or whatever you want to call that. It's neat in a storytelling sort of way. And it was jarring. Even watching this the second time, it's still jarring to me. And so I wanted to get your guys' reactions on that. Gary?
I would say I would agree that it's definitely jarring, but one other thing I picked up on is that in the hospital, there's a different color palette used every time they jump to the hospital because it's like whites and grays, but I think at some point in that whole thing, you jump to another group of people talking. I don't know if it's in the war room or somewhere else, but there's like, it's very noticeable because it's very poppy color, and then you jump back to the hospital and it's very monotone again. Steven?
I will say I have a note about that as well, and I feel like that is another the show trying to show you that Shinji has, after the battle, after having his head split open by a angel's shot going through his skull, which again we'll talk about the battle, but I think it's showing there that his cranial nerves, as referenced by Dr. and I'm not going to ever remember her name, but the doctor, they're not entirely set back. Right now, everything is kind of black and white for him or monocolored for him. And as he starts acclimating back to the world, you see those colors start to slowly come back into his vision. And so I think it's trying to show you he's trying to get back to this not numb state where he's at. Because when he wakes up from the hospital, his first thing is, this isn't my ceiling. Or I don't know the ceiling is, I think, the exact translation. He just had his head split open by an angel, and that is his first thought. He's obviously super numb. He's not all there. And as he comes back into being, you get more of that color. And I think it's trying to emphasize that. I don't know if you guys have different interpretations.
I hadn't noticed the transition back to color, but as you're saying it, I know that as we kind of get some moments later in the episode, whenever he is starting to remember things, that those come at you as just these series of vibrant, just nonstop color blasts that are frenetic and just extremely quick cuts of scenes. And so, yeah, I'm almost want to go back and watch it a third time here before continuing on with the episode, just to see if I can spot a transition of color. Because to me, the hospital was just always that starkly white thing. Just it was sort of to show like this sickly white of the sterile environment of the hospital. So I'm curious, yeah, both if there is that transition that you discuss, and also whenever the hospital potentially shows up in later episodes, if it has more color then or not. Shotzi?
And then the one thing that stood out to me for scene composition and everything was just I really like that shot of Shinji sitting in the hospital there with like the shadow over him and everything, and Misato walks up to in the shot, and it's still like they're all black. They're like a black or dark gray color, but you can still see the details on them. But then there's like the brightness all around them. I just thought that was a really nice looking shot there for that part of the episode. Go back ahead, Steven.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that cut that they'd had there was just, I think it's very important to get how this show is going to go. It's not going to necessarily always be sequential from a time pattern set sequence. You're gonna have starts and stops and rewinds, and it's something to just lean into, I guess. One of the other questions I had was Shinji's move-in to the apartment and how that goes. And obviously we could talk about the sexuality aspects of it all. And I already mentioned that you see Misato's underwear. You cut to a scene of her actually starting to change, although it does a shot of, blocking her, and then it also shows Shinji's butt as well. So you do get a lot of that. But also, just Misato's general apartment is filled with alcohol and easy to eat things. It doesn't seem like she's living a very good life. And she also has and I'll talk about this in a little bit after we talk about all this, but she seems like she's not living a great life. And I wanted to kind of get your guys' impression on Misato from what we see of her. Gary?
I also very much got that she lives in a dump, but it was noticeable because there appeared to be a switch frame where the first time you kind of walk in, I feel like it shows her apartment as if it's like mountains of beer cans. And then like a couple scenes later, it's like, oh, well, this looks like there are beer cans around, but it's not an absolute like mountains of garbage around. Like, I just felt like the first scene was very much a shock and awe number of like stacked beer can piles. So I don't know if maybe I just saw it wrong or just perceived it wrong. But Tyler?
And I was taking it more from the perspective, so I didn't mention this about the first episode too. She seems like a very upbeat person and everything like that. So I was kind of just coming at it as more like, okay, she's living her life there, basically not really caring too much. She did also mention like she just recently moved in as well, so I'm wondering too. Like I was like, okay, well maybe she just hasn't really had time to go buy actual food, but whereas buying beer and alcohol and stuff is a lot easier. And then I'm instantly going back to, of course, so as we've, I think, somewhat established, she's older in like the 30s, we're thinking here. But I was like, oh, I was thinking back to a lot of like college houses and stuff like that. You have beer cans and bottles on display as your trophy wall or something like that. So that's kind of just how I took it, more of like she's just young and living her life, I guess.
Yeah, it's definitely the apartment reeks of almost Arrested Development, where she's, especially as you realize that she's older, that she shouldn't be living like this. This is a little much. And then the food just being just cheap takeout and just microwave meals, and she's just slamming beers nonstop. It's definitely a sense that Shinji almost is perhaps bringing more maturity to this living situation than Misato is going to be bringing, even though she does try and get him on this schedule and things like that. So, Amanda?
I would agree with that. And also, my other take from that was like, well, she's by herself. But most people that are just like messy in the moment or whatever, like would have immediately been like, "Oh, I'm sorry, let me clean this up really fast. Quick, here, I'll do." Like, she was totally oblivious to it and just like, "Oh, hey, don't open that one. Don't open that fridge. I don't want to disturb me sleeping." Like, no context, no explanation. Maybe you should introduce him to your other roommate, the penguin, apparently, that lives there.
Pen for the win, bro.
And the penguin.
So I'm like, I think that they're implying she's like that normally, but that is interesting that she decides to bring this 14-year-old boy home to live with her. I guess she is technically like his guardian or in charge of him or something, but still, that's different.
So I want to challenge your guys' interpretations here with a little twist thrown into this. One of the things that Masato says, Masato has an internal dialogue that she doesn't say to everyone else. Obviously, it's internal that she says to the viewer. And one of the things that she keeps repeating multiple times is how she needs to put on this big front, how she needs to act very happy. And one of the things she says in that apartment is, I wonder if I laid it on too thickly. This happiness and hyper juju, sort of happy blah, blah, blah thing. Taking into the consideration that she might be pretending to be happy, does that change how you perceive her living conditions?
She in the Americanized English dubbing is not happy. She's a fucking sociopath. Like, imagine somebody who's just like amps up to 11. Like, she's like, "Hey, do you want some food?" And he's like, and you get the sense that he's very shy and he's in a new place. And I'm sure he's like, "I'm not really hungry." And just like, you just see her leap across this table. I was like, "What? You're not hungry? You need food." And then just like jives back. And I was like, "Holy shit, this is not, she's just a fucking psychopath." Like, she's not chipper. Like, and that's just the way it was translated. It's like, she is a fucking psychopath. Anyway.
Yeah, she's got a manic energy in terms of trying to get Shinji almost to come out of his shell as she perceives it. But yeah, it is almost. I took note of that same line that she's worried about him seeing right through it. To me, I took that less as she was laying on the whole acting young sort of situation. It was just more like the happiness, the cheeriness of her situation. I do think it is still basically that she is more childlike than she didn't necessarily know how to grow up in some ways, even though she is a high-ranking officer in this secret military organization. And her home life is just apparently that she just doesn't really know how to be an adult in some ways. To me, it doesn't read like depression necessarily. But yeah, with the Shinji thing, she's definitely trying to hide that not all's well for sure. And yeah, the concept that her depression is necessarily a super pervasive thing in her life doesn't read to me super noticeably at this point, really. That's it.
Yeah, so first to go back to Gary's point about her being manic, this was, again, from my perspective of watching some of the anime stuff, it just felt like this was a typical anime woman where she is polite and then acts like all of a sudden really loud and shouts and stuff like that, and then reverts back to the quiet, calm demeanor there. So that famous example for me would be like Bulma from Dragon Ball Z. She kind of does that a lot there, like especially some of the earlier parts of the show.
That's fair.
To the depression part there that you had mentioned, Stephen, I kind of took that almost the same way of JC did. Of like, it was more her thought was more specific to that moment there, not in general of her life. It was just more like, because I think you might have mentioned this, JC. Like, there was conversation that like maybe everything's not all right or something like that at the time, whereas not just the. I guess I don't know if that's what you said, JC, or not, but it was just not necessarily like her trying to put on a happy front there because she's trying to mask her depression, but maybe just kind of trying to cheer him up, and maybe she was thinking, did she come across way too thick in applying the happiness? Go ahead, Gary.
I did not read any depression. I do know that maybe this show gets darker, so I didn't catch any of that. But my third conspiracy theory, and that is that she is a handler. She's HR. Like the reason she's getting in her own head is because her job is to control this little boy whose only use is to run the big fucking mechs. Like, she's not a scientist. She's not a world leader. She's fucking HR. Like, her only job is to make sure this little kid runs the big ass fucking mech, and how she does it, nobody cares. And the fact that she's a fucking sociopath doesn't matter because she keeps the secrets, she can be trusted, and she gets the little boy to jump in the mech. That's my theory.
I'm not going to comment on that. But what I will say is that it is useful to note that they did call out, and they said several times, what Misato is in the previous episode. And Misato is a civil worker, somehow with a rank of captain in the United Nations Army, or whatever the heck that is. So, I mean...
And she did more than just handle him. Like, when they were doing their operation, like, she was giving orders, and she was like, you know, launch the thing, or ready this, and like, she was like the commander at mission control here.
You implying that based on gender, I'm downplaying her role in the mission? So I apologize.
Well, I wasn't, but if we're gonna go there, sure, Gary.
Yeah.
I was waiting for
don't know.
another conspiracy theory.
She just seemed very, very ditzy, and I didn't really.
I like your
I
theory.
assume that was her job. Is she's a handler, and obviously these are the things I get to speculate about because I have no idea what's in the future, and it's much more fun. Whereas Game of Thrones was a rewatch. This is just a cold watch and just making shit up as I go along. Anyway, that was all I had. I don't know who had the last question.
Technically, still me. I guess I don't. Since we have so many other questions in the wait, I'm not going to say anything else except for once again reiterating, Pen is the shit. So. That's it for me.
Okay, is Pen like? Does anyone else?
Don't ask questions about Pen. You don't know about Pen.
No, out of the fucking blue. Like, and maybe it's just world building. It's just like it's totally fucking normal to have a penguin as a roommate, not as a pet, but as a roommate. Like, they are an equal. They're paying one half of the rent. JC?
I believe you missed the clear exposition that explained everything you need to know about Pen. Misato says, he's a hot spring penguin. It's a technical term. That's it. That's all you need to know. And in case you missed it as well, he has a cool little collar that says Pen. He's
get on the level, Gary.
Hangs out in the fridge, takes a shower, apparently. Is able to work the dials and knobs in the shower. But yeah. He's it's good character. Good characterization.
That was all I had.
Did you have anything else, Steven?
No, I'll make comments on other people.
Amanda.
The second episode was a lot of what happened. Wait, what's going on? What's this? Though I must comment on a very, very impressive action sequence there when we did find the memory flashback to what was going on, and I was like, oh, okay, if I just wait, my questions will be answered. But I was gasping, honestly, as they did it. They did a very good job, and I was like, this 14-year-old didn't just jump into this thing like that. No one else. Obviously, the skill of like controlling these things is not easy, or they would be able to have all sorts of pilots. But like, he did an amazing job. Where did he learn that? That's amazing. He kicked ass and did it instinctually, seeming with like no control whatsoever.
So did you read it as that was still him doing it, or like he had brain death and the machine did all the work and he was just a conduit for like, but you actually thought like he blacked out and then like just went on a murder spree?
I feel like it's got to be somewhat him. What I don't know is how much conscious control he's exercising over that, because they did seem to imply that he I don't know. Like they had no vitals for him or something for a minute there. I can
Steven?
see you guys being like, can't say anything.
Well, what I'm going to say is that, and I think that we could talk about if we want to go into the battle scene, we can talk about this now as well. One of the things you immediately notice during the battle scene is when the angel grabs Shinji's, I'm just going to call it a mech for our sake. When he grabs Shinji's mech, you could see Shinji's arms start to really cause that pain. I think Tyler alluded to the idea of Pacific Rim, like they have that in Pacific Rim. And then what happens is the machine rips, cracks, fractures Shinji's arm, and you see Shinji, it goes to Shinji's face. You can't describe the pain he's going through. And what that tells us as the viewer is when Shinji gets that palm put on his face from the angel, and he's having that freaking rod rammed through his head, Shinji feels that. Shinji has a rod go through his head, a laser rod go through his head. I think
his brain tricks brain tricks him into thinking he got a rod through that, and his brain tricks him into thinking that
your nerves
in the nerves, yeah.
Your nerves are connected to it. So I mean, it's external stimulus coming into the body. It's not really the brain tricking, but regardless to the point, Shinji's body and all his neural circuits believe he's just taken a pylon through the eye. And one of the things that you see after the battle is Shinji waking up in his seat going, what happened there? We'll talk about what happens after, what happens when he wakes up in a little bit. But I think it's very fair to say that Shinji got a pylon through the eye and passed the hell out as you would, or merged somehow with a subconscious mech, because one of the statements that it said is the Evangelion is showing its true nature. What does that true nature mean? What are we talking about there? It doesn't describe that. It just says it's showing its true nature. That is what we're seeing there, is the Evangelion's true nature. Garrett.
Does anyone fully understand the mech architecture? Is he in the head because he gets stabbed, the mech gets stabbed in the head, or is he in the chest like the Power Rangers?
Remember when they put in that giant,
he's the fusion. I just imagine as a fusion core.
Yeah,
it's a fusion core from
it's
Fallout.
That's
what it reminded me of.
Yeah.
Yes,
it's a plug that kind of goes into what would be like our spinal column essentially. So it's sitting there, it's connected essentially through all the different systems of the mech in that way. But it's not. Whenever the angel's hitting the mech in the head, it's not actually physically anywhere near Shinji. He's just feeling it as if it is.
Is he in the mech, or is he like back at headquarters this whole time?
He is in the mech.
He's got to be in it because
Yeah,
they had to recover him.
I didn't know, because it's got a power cord. That might be a data cord too. I don't know. Like
even hearing Steven just describe that just now, like I was cringing the whole time because they did an amazing, excellent job of showing that, considering how little they had to do, but just showing that pain. Like I was cringing watching it, and then I was just how it flashed to his eyes when it went through the mech's head. I was like, they did bravo. They did a fantastic job of showing that.
That was all in last episode, wasn't it? Like they all the pain and the murder was in the last episode, and then it cut to what happened after he blacked out in this episode, right?
Yeah, I guess technically it happened in the last episode, but this episode he's having understandably some PTSD from that and remembering it.
Yeah, this episode starts with him starting to walk the mech. Like episode 1 ends with him getting launched up and standing there, and then episode 2 begins with him starting to walk, falling, and then the blackout happens. We cut to the hospital room, and then the end of the episode, he flashes back and remembers what happened in the battle. So it feels like it's been a whole episode, but gosh, it's been less than 20 minutes by the time we actually get here.
Yep.
Yeah, we go a lot of places, but yeah, the cinematography in the fight is amazing, and it does, kind of like you said, it does a lot with very little relatively. I mean, whenever the final shot goes through the Eva's head, and then it just kind of slumps, and then just blood spurts out from both ends. It's not technically a whole lot going on there. It's really just an animation of just something going head down and then just some blood flying. But it visceral. It feels just shocking to watch. Yeah. It's a wild
It
scene.
hits you right. Like, that's
Mm.
crazy.
Yeah, they do reference that Shinji must be in there because at one point during the fight, they call in the command room for an emergency plug eject now. They're trying to get Shinji out of the EVA. At that point, they reply that I can't. My commands aren't getting through. And then the EVA reactivates and they say it's gone berserk. So yeah, then that point, the fight is really on at that point.
Would you say that it has become a runaway?
Potentially. I can see that. He's not running away this time. Or is he?
I see what you did there. Sorry, continue.
No, it's yeah, I hadn't considered I read it initially as the EVA doing things on its own. But I mean, once Amanda mentioned that the blackout could have just been Shinji in a blackout state going ballistic on his own, that's potentially an option as well. I hadn't read it that way before, but I can see it either way, recontextualizing it like that. Gary?
Conspiracy theory number 4. Shinji was a murderer in a previous life. That's why he's chosen. They take murderers from death row and they implant their memories into small children. And because Mr. Crazy Mad Scientist Man is the founder of this project, he injects the death row inmates' memories into his own child.
Now there's an actual conspiracy theory for once.
That is something. That is definitely something.
But it doesn't explain like why this wussy little 14-year-old would be a murder machine. Like, at least in the Pacific Rim logic, like the guy who's doing it is like just a street thug who just beats the crap out of people. Like, he's just good at street fighting. Like, that's what Pacific Rim is. No, Tyler disagrees with me about what
Tyler's
makes good
disagreeing with Pacific Rim. But
yeah,
I think that if the show is going that way, the show is saying that inside every well-functioning human is a feral beast waiting to be unleashed. And that is where that would be going. Do I think that's the case? No, I think Shinji was unconscious. But
okay, so that's just a diverge. So the more educated in this show believe that it's the mech itself, not the person, which I guess is probably a
excuse me. It doesn't explain it, I don't think, very well. So it is up for debate. You could be right, we could be wrong.
I could be right. It could be the implantation of a death row inmate into his memories.
No. We're not going to go that far into the crazy town there.
Good Lord.
You said I could be right. I'm going to take it.
Amanda, what else did you have to try and get us back on track here a little bit?
I unfortunately have nothing to get us back on track. I have been completely derailed by Gary's conspiracy theories.
We'll fine. We can skip over Gary for now and come back to him later.
I don't have anything else to say about this episode. I'm just throwing shade at everyone else's shit. So, you can,
JC, go ahead and kind of wind us on home here with your thoughts on the episode.
I didn't really have any grand questions, unfortunately, here, but I did just really enjoy that final battle, especially once the EVA does go berserk. Fuyutsuki, Gendo's right-hand man in the NERV Central, immediately as the EVA roars and leaps unnaturally, like with somehow like some sort of front flip kick thing. It's like its feet are leading it somehow. It's just unnatural and weird. Leaps onto the angel, starts ripping and pulling at it, and Fuyutsuki immediately just says, "We've won." The fight's really just getting started, but he knows it's over.
Right?
It's great. I love it. The AT field coming up is a cool little thing. When then the left arm restored and Unit 01 also raises an AT field, which then corrodes the angels, breaching it, quote, like it's nothing. And then it just counteracts it grabs the angel's arms, does twice back what it had originally done to the angel, or to Unit 01, just ripping those arms. And then, really, really awesome fight. And I don't know, do we want to get into at this point how the after Shinji comes back from that. I guess
Well,
maybe it's
real
better for
quick-
me to put it to the others. Go ahead,
Well, real
Steven.
quick, why don't we, before we get to that, well, the fight ends with something I think is pretty cool in that the angel, realizing it has been defeated, does something that we don't expect from viewer, because we're imagining this as some giant monster, some kaiju, if you will, from, Pacific Rim terminology. It's beaten. We expect it to die. Instead, it does this weird moldy thing with its body where it like contorts itself into a sphere around Shinji with its face facing into the Eva's face and self-destructs like a badass. And it's a pretty cool scene. And I think actually the scene afterwards with the Evangelion just standing there in the aftermath and the fire glow behind it, that is a really cool visual.
Yeah, definitely another scene for scoring cinematography points. I had forgotten how fantastic even the first 2 episodes were with cinematography, because there are some really great fights later on in the series that really come to mind first. But even just revisiting these, it was great to see just those awesome moments. The angel after the end of 2 Mine in episode 1, as it's just sitting there rebuilding itself with a brand new face, and then now in episode 2, Shinji walking away. Well, the Evo walking away with Shinji inside it after the destruction of the angel Sechiel. Yeah, very cool stuff. But yeah, so after the whole battle, then we see Shinji comes to, and he's standing there, kind of frozen in the Eva, and meanwhile, he can hear the comms as NERV discusses how to get him out of there, and the armor of the head just falls off and hits the ground. At that point, he's kind of looking into a building and kind of sees a reflection. Kind of overall, what was your guys' read of what all happens there? What are your takes on what he's saying at that point?
I think he
Tyler?
was hallucinating that there, like something was playing tricks with his mind there to see that eye just all of a sudden form in front of him and stuff.
I'm waiting for you guys. I'm not going first.
That part I had to say out loud, like, wait, was that which one was that? I couldn't tell if it was the good guy, the bad guy, or what was going on.
I don't remember any of this. I probably was not paying attention.
Gary thinks this is a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it's. I think it's hard to understand exactly what's going on with that scene in the first watch, because it's to me it doesn't even read very well necessarily that there's a large glass building next to him and he's looking at reflections potentially, and yeah, it could be sort of a hallucination in that sense as well. But you're not given much information there. But Shinji is definitely startled and terrified by what he does see. Tyler?
Is it a glass building, or is he just down in the bay area and it just happens to be like the shiny reflection off of like the metal surface?
I was under the impression that it was a building. I can pull the episode here, but Steven?
I think you're right that it was a building. But yeah, check that out. I will say, from when I see it, it looks like the armor has fallen off. And one of the things this harkens back to for me is when it says, we have created a human Evangelion. That implies to me this is not just cybernetic. This is something that's biological. And when we talk about it going berserk, maybe it has its own mind. When it's so what are we talking about? What is this? And we see this creature, this weird warped creature. Is that I think it's on first view, I think it's a disgusting creature because it looks weird to me. And its eye opens up in this freaky way, and it poses so many questions as to what is Shinji in? What is he piloting? We thought this was a mech. Why would this mecha? And his eyes are moving on their own as well. It looks at Shinji. It looks at Shinji through whatever, like the building or whatever it happens to be. It knows that it is being seen. What the hell is Shinji in? We don't know. Gary.
I had to pull up the episode to see what the fuck you guys were talking about, and I found it. I see a head roll, and I actually didn't realize you guys are saying that's off the mech he's in. I just assumed that was the remains of a previous mech. Like the head was not the fancy purple color; it was like a tan color. Like I thought it was maybe a different mech. And then the eye, I as I watch it, this scene actually existed. I did not catch any of it. Like just a fucking fever dream. So I made no meaning of it because I had no idea what was going on.
It is a building. I have it pulled up right now.
Yeah, it's Microsoft Edge is not cooperating with my screenshot abilities thanks to copyright protection, but otherwise I would have shared a screenshot. But yeah, there's one scene, like I say, it's hard to read at first because you don't even know what you're still learning what an EVA looks like when it's standing upright. There we go. We're getting very in-depth recording tools here as Steven pulls up the monitor and points his webcam at it.
So this is you can see it's in a building here, or some sort of reflective surface that you're looking at.
Take your word for it.
So you're assuming this is a fever dream, like this is all in his head?
Me? No.
I mean, Shinji has just gone through a bunch of stuff, so it would not be out of the realm of possibility for him to be seeing stuff that isn't actually happening. But yeah, it also is. They've referenced that this is an artificial human. This is some sort of thing more than just a pure robotic situation going on. Gary?
Actually, now I think of it, I probably assumed that was the evil angel monster that opened its eyes. Like, I didn't associate it with the mech thing. I associated
You had the same
with
thought that
evil
Amanda had, honestly.
Angel monster. Just the same theory. It's controlled by an evil hostile government. So
I like
maybe he's secretly part of the evil hostile government. That's why he was chosen. You never know. Anyway, you can continue with logical thought.
Yes. The only other, unless anybody else had any thoughts on that section, the only other line that I thought was worth noting that hasn't been discussed already was as Gendo and Ritsuko are looking out over the Unit 0 bay, where we saw that hand shoved into the background earlier, and now we see the other side of it, where there's this Eva sitting slumped into a building with the hand shoved through a wall. So earlier, that's what we had seen in episode 1. It's clearly something has gone on with this Eva to where it's not in a good state. They talk about how Rei will recover in 20 days, and they hope to have Unit 0 restored by then. Ritsuko says it'll be difficult on those children, and Gendo replies, "No one else can pilot the Evas, so as long as they're not dead, they have to." So just a fun little world thing there that apparently only these teenagers can be the ones to save the world. Tyler?
I took that more as like that thing had kind of punched its arm into the building there, like not just like stuck it through there and like maybe a fall or something, but more like in a fit of rage or frustration had punched into the wall there.
I would say that's a good read.
Okay.
It's got a pose looking like it was trying to get its hand through that wall, not necessarily as like it tripped and fell or anything. Yeah. Yeah, that was all I really had for major notes then.
All right. So I think we covered everybody there, right? Because Gary doesn't have anything. Oh, Steven.
I have just a few comments. One of the things that I noted in here was when they're talking about why doesn't Ikari go stay with his dad? Oh, he doesn't want to go stay with his dad. Why doesn't he want to go stay with his dad? He's an Ikari. Oh, and they're like, that makes sense. This family's fucked up. So that is just a little thing there. I loved the underground city rising up from the ground in just a cool cinematographic and cinematography, whatever you want to call it. So now you understand when they're going down, all that city that was hanging down went up. And now, at least I believe that, it is now up above the city in a kind of you kind of makes you wonder. It goes up and they say, "Oh, now this is our fortress." How does adding more buildings mean that it is our fortress? Like, what's the implication there? And I don't believe they really explain it. They just say, "Look at this cool scene. That'll save us. The coolness." And it'll come eventually, but and I did want to get back to when you mentioned the human instrumentality project. Let's just parse out those 3 words. Human instrumentality project. If you were to tell me that there was a human instrumentality project happening in the United States right now, I would become very concerned, because that is implying you're making humans into instruments of some kind. You've already talked about human evangelions. What's going on here? What are they doing? And they don't entirely reference what is happening in that council. They say, "Oh, got to make sure that you're on the time schedule. This is only." I think we mentioned all those weird things from the color council before, the council of color, whatever you want to call them. But there seems to be some, to get on Gary's level, there's some sort of conspiracy here. And one of the things they mention is, we need to have a cover up, or it's not a cover up. What is it? We need some sort of story to spin.
PR. They need PR spin
PR
to explain to the masses.
Yep. Well, it's not to explain to the masses. It's to go for a cover story.
Yeah,
And
they
cut
used
to Misato.
scenario B22 or something.
There you go. 22-3, I believe it was, which pointed out 2 things for me. One, Misato knew exactly what Plan B22-3 was. She's not in PR. So this sort of cover-up stuff has got to be fairly well known in NERV. Number 2, they are covering up the existence of angels somehow from the people, and making this into, I don't know how they're explaining what's happening here. Honestly, we don't really get to see what B22-3 is, but why are they hiding the existence of angels? Like, even if you're going to go to any monster movie, it's already been mentioned multiple times. So we'll go to Pacific Rim. They don't hide that the world is being attacked by kaiju, because then that unites the world around, hey, let's fuck up the kaiju. Why are they hiding angels? Why are they hiding evangelions? What's happening? And it's something that is obliquely
Secret government conspiracy. It's really the angels are controlled by America, and they want to fight America.
Jason.
Yeah, I mean, so the NERV is already under the UN umbrella by the time we get to NERV, and then the Colorful Crusades, their meeting room, they discuss like NERV will have to work quickly to conduct disinformation. So this group underneath them is already issuing orders to NERV, who issues orders to the UN and everything like that. So in terms of keeping it a secret, it definitely seems like if NERV is already underneath the UN, countries at least know about it. So it's purely for the sake of the populace. Like the average person going to work day to day just has no idea that there's these potentially world-ending angels showing up. Who knows if they know about the one from 15 years ago, or if just this one is the one that they're going to try and keep under wraps. But yeah, they end up saying like lesser nations would go bankrupt if they tried to go through all this process, but the Human Instrumentality Project should be the top priority. And so it implies that maybe NERV is also secretly working to, perhaps unknown to their ultimate purpose, is actually working on this as well. Because Ikari is also the one running NERV, so if he's also on this council running that, is he subverting things that NERV is doing? Is NERV working against their own interests, and in what way? There's just a lot to unpack with a lot of things with this quick meeting here.
That would kind of make sense a little bit too, because it's at one point in the beginning, he goes like, "Oh, well, she didn't answer. I guess I could just get to a shelter." And he was so nonchalant about that, like it was just like, a mild tsunami coming in or something, like not a big deal, but you need to get to shelter or something. I feel like there would be a much more alarmed attitude if you knew that this gigantic how many feet tall thing is going to attack the city, that would call for that's a little cause for a little more panic. He's pretty chill. That or he's very level-headed, which, I mean, obviously he's not normal because normal people can't pilot these things. So maybe he is.
Steven, did you have any more points to kind of cover?
I had one more thing here, and well, yeah, I'll say just one more thing here. One of the interesting things when one of the interesting things when Shinji is walking into his new apartment, I talked about this a little bit before, but he has a weird pause in front of the door when he's being invited in and before he crosses this threshold. And it's just something to take note of, something to be interested in, because it's a strange thing to focus on. And it seems to have more weight to it than what we would normally associate with being invited into an apartment.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, to me, it read like Shinji just, I mean, someone who's already been worried about convincing himself not to run away from these situations and who's already been wondering if he should even be here. Now this is almost him making that sort of commitment is how it read to me, that he's just saying like, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. This is now something that is going to become part of my life. I'm going to put some effort towards this, if nothing else. Gary?
Is his backstory ever explained? Like, is he from an orphanage or something where like he doesn't know about
It'll get to that.
homes or what does Steven say? I didn't catch it.
He said we'll get to it, and then had a very knowing
Evil
laugh.
I was just laughing along
Anyway,
with does he know about homes?
Yeah. Anyway, I would agree that there was it was a point made that like he felt uncomfortable going into someone else's home or calling something home. Like I get the sense he's a street kid. Maybe he came from an orphanage. Maybe he his mom died and he's been on the run. Who knows? He has a unknown backstory that I can make up until I'm told further.
Yep, we specifically know a lot about him and his father's relationship at this time, but not really much about any mother situation. So it's definitely it's a known unknown at this time. Yeah, the Misato home life thing definitely. It doesn't sound like he had a good home life to begin with. Even with they talk about it being 3 years since he and Gendo had last seen each other. So during that time, it doesn't seem like he was necessarily like living a good life in the meantime. He's just been sort of just building up a lot of teenage angst in that interim there. So yeah,
come on, JC. Are you telling me that with a dad like that, he wouldn't grow up to be a well-adjusted member of society? When your dad just kind of throws you off and says, if you're not going to be useful to me and be a fighter pilot, get the fuck out of here. I don't need you.
I mean, I would argue that being 3 years away from that sort of father would probably be better than being 3 years with him. So
you're probably right.
Well, that was the thing when they were like, oh, why wouldn't he want to live with his father? And I'm like, I'm sorry, why would he want to live with him? He hasn't lived with him. And the guy literally summoned him so he could stick him in a robot and say, hey, I have a use for you. Literally says, because I have a use for you. I'm just dying to go live with that man, that's for sure.
Yeah, I did talk about the Misato living situation there. I did want to also mention this motif that ends up happening again, where laying inside Misato's apartment, he's looking up at the ceiling before we get the flashback to the whole battle. He's looking up at the ceiling saying, another ceiling I don't know, referring back to the hospital. Now this is 2 ceilings that he's looking up at, and he asks himself, why am I here? So even though he's crossed this threshold and made this effort, he thinks, and that's how it reads to me, that it's showing that he's trying to cross this threshold and not run away this time. He's still questioning himself. It isn't just a once and done thing. You don't just cross that threshold and now you're fully in it 100%. So it ends up it'll be a motif we continue to see. He's not out of the woods yet in terms of questioning things.
All right, then. I will say, does anyone have anything else we want to talk about here for the second episode? Or should we take it to the home stretch there?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Getting thumbs up from Gary, so we must be good here. So that'll probably then do it for this recording here. For next time, we will be watching episode 3 titled A Transfer and episode 4 titled Hedgehog's Dilemma. I might have to put together a list of just the episode titles here so I don't sit there and read the descriptions that go along with it here, but that'll be more for me to work on in the meantime.
Netflix titles The Silent Phone and Rain After Running Away.
I think I was reading that's like the Japanese translation of the title, and then there's the English version of the title.
Yeah, that's what I was under the impression of as well. So we'll have to build a list to compare them with.
Yes.
Because even episode 2 here was Unfamiliar Ceilings.
Yes.
So.
All right. Well, much like the washing machine of life, we are going to wash this episode away and end it here. So thank you, everyone, for listening. It was a quote from the show, Gary. I can tell you're not understanding where that's coming from. But
yeah, I would have to pay attention to the show to understand it. So
maybe next time.
Maybe next time.
Thanks again, though, everyone, for listening. Tune in next time. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.